I realized that, yes, it's great to have entertainment, it's great to have science and technology. And furthermore, if you really want to connect with people, then you have to, touch them here and,
Mm.
and their emotional core.
Welcome to the Grow Progress, where we highlight the things that help us grow. In this podcast, we're taking a look at author Addie D. Goyal, who has been working on helping people grow through entertainment. He's a young prodigy at 25 years old. He's written a book, he's working on a video game, and he's produced videos. So, without further ado, let's dive in and see what Addie has for us. So, I'm here with Addie D. Goyal. Addie is the author of the book The Sun Waker. I'll just show you guys the book The Sun Waker here. It's a fantastic story. You can check out the review that I left on Amazon. Addie lived pretty geographically close to me, right? You're in Hollywood. I'm in Pompano Beach, and we have a mutual friend who brought us together, Steve, who is a Toastmaster extraordinaire, who has his fingerprints on all of the Toastmasters in South Florida and has really built out that area of well, he's prolific in that area. And so he put Addie and I together knowing we were both interested in the personal growth space, and little did we know just how interesting it was going to be to connect to each other. We have very different takes on personal growth and very different ways that we'd like to help people grow. And so I'm so grateful, Addie, that you're here to talk with us. And I'm really interested to hear about, especially the Sun Waker, to talk about that. And I always have two questions for anybody that I talk to. One is, what is your personal growth story? What was like that moment, that defining moment that made you grow? And then I'll get to the second question later on in our call. But please just give us a quick introduction. You're a young guy. Tell us where you're from, what brought you into the space of personal growth.
So yeah, you mentioned my story for personal growth and what got me into it, and then what was the last thing you mentioned?
The story of personal growth, and the second question I'll ask later on in our podcast.
Got it. So first of all, thank you for the fantastic introduction. It was, very, very warm, very kind. I'm sure Stephen will be, very happy with your blurb of him as well, afterwards. And thank you also for having me on the show, on the podcast. I enjoy your work. I like what you do. And both, on the podcast and beyond that as well, I think, you're doing great stuff, and very much excited to see what you have for the future. And to answer your question, what got me into, I guess, personal growth, I would say that the biggest thing for me was, you mentioned Toastmasters. So for me, it was Toastmasters. So for those who don't know what Toastmasters is, it's a club that we have like thousands of clubs all over the world. And the main focus of Toastmasters is to enhance and develop your speaking skills, communication skills, and leadership skills. And the way that they do that is by encouraging you to go up in front of maybe 10 people, 20 people, however large the club is,
Mm-hmm.
and just practice that. And in the process, you also learn about how to speak so that others want to listen, how to speak in a way that others are growing, others are learning, others are being inspired by your words. The focus on communication, the way you communicate, the way you share information is in Toastmasters.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the club's environment because everyone there is kind of there to grow in something. One of the big commonalities across the members is that they have a focus on personal growth.
Mm-hmm.
They'll read books about growth. They'll maybe attend conferences. They'll watch videos on the subject. And I think that creates a nice culture where everyone there is present to support each other. I think we're all kind of like in the same boat, and there's no like one is better than the other. It's like everyone's kind of in their own lane, and everyone's just trying to progress in their own journey, and everyone's journey is different. So I think that culture, that being in that environment was very inspiring, and I think the amount of support, amount of encouragement I got, especially when I joined, and even today, has been very, very much helpful for me, feeling like I have something worth giving to the world. that everyone kind of has a unique talent or a unique purpose, you can say, and they really try to nurture that out of every member in the club. So that's what got me into it. And I know in our earlier conversation, you asked me why did I join. So the reason for that was, in high school is very much by chance. Where in high school I was in this club for entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
and in those meetings we had a competition, and I remember getting last place in that. We weren't exactly the best public speakers at that time, or even today for that matter. But like at that time, I think I realized that I wanted to improve upon the skill of speaking. My dad happened to attend a Toastmasters club meeting once, maybe a few years prior to that, and I remember him talking about it. So I asked him, if they were still around and if he can take me to one of the meetings, and he said, yeah. So luckily for us, it was very close by. It was like maybe a 5-minute drive.
Mm-hmm.
There one sun on Saturday morning, and I think the moment I came into the room, the meeting room, it was a very warm, very very kind, very supportive environment. Everyone was very welcoming of me, and I remember that after I joined the club, a lot of people mentioned to me that we wished we had joined Toastmasters at your age,
Yes. Yep.
and I think that kind of gave me further encouragement to maybe just keep on trying it out, keep on attending the meetings. So that I realized that I was getting a lot of benefit
Yep.
from doing attending the meetings.
One of the, and I probably should have started with this. One of the things that really I admire about you is you're a young guy. I don't know how old. How old are you right now?
25.
25. So you're in Toastmasters. You've produced videos. You've written a book. You are designing a video game at 25 years old, and so that's outstanding. And but the aura about you, in addition to that, is about giving. It's about being a part of this growth-centered community. And one of the things we all hope, we all believe, or necessarily believe in this world of personal growth, is that we can become better people through our efforts. They call it the growth mindset, and there's some people who don't believe that. I am who I am. I'm always going to be how I am, and that is what it is. Or I'm a failure. I can never get better at life, and so they carry that with them. But the Toastmasters people specifically, and certainly I see it in you, is this idea that I am where I am today. I want to grow. I want to get better, and so I'm going to be taking those steps to get there. And not only have you done some cool things, but you're also all about the giving back process and inspiring others along the way. So I think it's really important for the audience to know that's who you are, not just a creator and an entertainer and a prolific one at that, but also somebody who's really genuinely interested in other people and their growth. And I think both of those are tremendous assets and things that are compelling about you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very very kind of you. And I mean, when you mentioned all about kind of like writing up, oh, I wrote a book and I did this and that. I was like, oh wow, I did all that. But I don't think about it very consciously. And I mean, I think like many people, I have my own times or days of insecurities. Like, oh, what if I'm not enough, or what if I haven't done enough, or what if I'm not doing enough? And I think I think I mean, very grateful that you mentioned all those. I think like it was, nice to hear that. Like at least, I'm not, I think I have a long way to go, and I always will have a long way to go. I always want to keep getting better and better. But I think it's nice to like look back also and see, okay, that you've done something as well, which is I think very encouraging sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that I really loved about the Sun Waker, and let's start with your book, because I think that this was a really well written book. I've been a prolific reader my life, just especially since personal development became a thing for me. Trying to read as much as I can and learn as much about the world, learn as much about myself as possible. And when I come across somebody who has a talent for writing, it's really obvious, and it's very obvious that you do. The way that you write, the way that you develop your characters, the way that um, you provide vivid imagery of the situations that are in there. It's not something that everybody has, and so um, this book's really cool. It has, for those of you who haven't had a chance to read it, it has 3 stories in it. It's got three people who are in basically dire situations in life, and it talks about the process they go through to come out on the other side and think differently and view the world in a different way. And uh, my question for you, Addie, is what inspired you to write this? I've heard the story of how you wrote it, and I think that's a fantastic story too. But what inspired you to write this? Why this story? Why three characters? Why a story about change?
Mhm. Yeah, great question, and thanks for all the positive words you're mentioning earlier about the book. And I've always loved writing for as long as I can remember. I've been writing since I was maybe 11 or 12 years old, and I wrote I think my first you can say book when I was maybe around 12 or 13 years old. And I think at that time I realized that this is what I want to do with my life. I also knew, however, that like as a career, I think it's hard to I think become somebody who's getting a stable amount of income and like having that source of I guess revenue come in when you're an artist or when you're a writer. So I think at my parents' encouragement, I pursued other things besides writing. Always there, I've always been writing, whether it's short stories or whatever it might be. So that creative part of me has always been there. But I always like knew that I wanted to write a book like and publish it at one point. So I think when I was in college, then there was a professor at Georgetown University named Eric Koster, and he has a program for book writing, and he encourages many students, especially in universities or even beyond universities, to be a part of the program and write a book,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's nonfiction, and it becomes something that you remember pretty
Yeah.
fondly. Project a pretty big project that you're writing a book, you're having that dedication and the time to write one, and he was. I think he reached out to me as well. He reached out to me as well, and I was, I think, one of the few, or maybe one of the lucky ones that he reached out to because I didn't go to a like an Ivy League or anything, and many of the students who were in this program were from those universities. So I think in that way I kind of lucked out. When he reached out, then I was pretty excited about having a chance to write and publish a book. So I jumped on that. Um, you asked me why did I write these three stories. Initially, actually, it was just one story. It was the one on the nanomedicine, the first one. And I realized that if I wanted to write a book, then it might have to be like a little bit longer. So I didn't want to just like take, the first story and like add fillers in it to make it, bigger. I wanted it to, be the way it was, keep it concise and trim down, but maybe make the book bigger because if people are going to be spending money on it, then I feel like they should be getting more value from the book. So then I added, stories two and three to that. And in terms of the topics, like, the first one was on cancer,
Mm-hmm.
the second one was on heart disease, and the third one was on sickle cell anemia. And I chose diseases that I knew that were very common, very prevalent, very relevant, that many people could relate to. So I knew, I know, for example, many people who have heart disease or who have family members with heart disease or even cancer. And where I live in South Florida, we have many people who have sickle cell anemia. So these are very prevalent diseases, and sickle cell especially is something that not many people know about, but it's very much common. Even like cancer and heart disease, they're very common, but many people know about them. Whereas sickle cell is not as well known compared to cancer and heart disease. So I wanted the stories to be inspiring. Like I didn't want the stories to just be like negative or to like kind of show us, a sorrowful ending. I wanted them to be uplifting, to be inspiring, and that's why I kind of had this concept that what if we use technologies to help people with the disease, with these diseases, whether it's cancer, whether it's heart disease. And, I conducted like, I mean, I went through actual research that's been done on how people are using nanomedicine for cancer, on how they're using gene editing
Mm-hmm.
for sickle cell. And I felt like with heart disease, it's one of those diseases where we know very much so that it's a preventable disease. If you're fixing your diet, your sleep, your exercise, then odds are that even if you have a genetic history of having heart disease, you can still mitigate a lot of the risk. So I wanted to focus more on a preventative solution for that particular story.
Yeah.
I feel like in today's world, we tend to focus a lot of emphasis on technology for everything. And the reality is that a lot of this can just be prevented or like done in a simpler way.
Yeah, they mentioned the actual diseases of the characters, but when I read the book, those aren't the diseases that I saw. For the first story, I saw the disease of someday, of workaholics.
Mhm.
Workaholics always working for that someday payoff. In the second story, uh, I saw the second story was the programmer, or was it the sickle
Develop.
cell, the developer? Yeah. So the second story, I saw the disease of boredom, of lack of motivation. And the third story, I saw the disease of lacking self-confidence. I mean, to me, those are the personal diseases along those stories that really intrigued me. And
Mhm.
how you, even more than that, how you introduce them to people, or how you, the human connection between the character that was diseased, sometimes it was themselves, or and the other characters who maybe had the personal disease or the mental affliction, how these personal connections helped them grow past what they were dealing with. And I found that incredible, how each person had a different way that they connected with the diseased person to move them into the next stage of life.
Mhm. So
So
thank you.
was that planned as well?
Mhm. Yeah, it was very much a part of the planning phase. One of the reasons why I wrote the book that way, and I'm glad you brought it up, is that I feel like almost all of our problems are actually personal problems or personal challenges. We look at a disease like an actual physical disease, like heart disease, chances are that it's coming from a personal problem. And a lot of the challenges that people can relate to in life happen to be personal problems as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you freeze?
I think so. When I freeze, we should just pause so I can edit that out.
What did I say last?
That a lot of these problems are personal problems that create the disease.
Yeah, and I also felt that most of the stories we enjoy the most, whether it's in film, whether it's in TV, whether it's in literature, are the problems of the person. Their dynamics with their loved ones, with their father, with their mother, with their sister, with their brother, with their best friend, with their husband, with their wife, whoever it is. And we can relate to that because we have our own problems like that in our own lives. We all have, I think, interpersonal challenges sometimes.
Mm.
And it doesn't mean it has to be like a negative thing. It can be a very positive thing if it leads to greater growth and harmony in the relationship. And I felt that if I just wrote a book on the diseases themselves, like the physical diseases, then yeah, it might be engaging, but it won't be relatable. And I wanted them to be relatable at a very deep level, at a very emotional core level. So that's why I introduced both the physical diseases, but also like very relatable and very personal. You can say flaws or traits that these characters had that they were also trying to overcome in
Right.
order for them to become better.
Yeah. Well, I really loved the book. I thought you hit home. At least two of the three stories were very relatable to me. The workaholic with the someday syndrome. So I always have to check myself and be like, okay, am I unbalanced? Am I spending too much time focused on trying to become successful? And do I need to focus more in other areas of my life? And then the other one about the developer who was bored in his job. And I remember years ago, I was sitting in a cubicle doing nothing at a job that I was not interested in. I didn't like the employees. I didn't like the space, blah, blah, blah. And, I sat in that for almost a year and it was like, man, what were you doing? What were you trying to accomplish in life with that? A year's a long time to waste. I really liked those stories, and I liked how you turned them around. I won't spoil it for everyone. I encourage anybody out there to get the Sunwaker, especially if you're looking for clues in how to motivate others. I think there's some really great gems in your book, Sunwaker. So I want to kind of circle back on growth through entertainment. all of these things you focused on helping people grow. You have the video out there that helps people understand, don't compete, collaborate. That's going to make you better. You're working on some other stuff. What brought you into the growth space? And where do you see it going for you? What is it that you hope to accomplish um, in the next 5, 10 years?
It's interesting you mentioned that because, when I first started writing at like, 11, 12 years old, then even at that time, I was thinking that I wanted to write stories for entertainment, but also for like some bigger purpose. Like in that case, when I was younger, when I wrote the other book, then it was basically how to entertain people while also teaching them
Mm,
science and technologies and futuristic things that are very much possible, very much possible,
mm,
and they're not just here yet in the mainstream. So I felt like that would be an exciting way to educate people while also giving them a nice story to enjoy. And that was the beginning. That was actually inspired by what I've read and grown up with as a kid. Like I grew up reading. There's a book series for kids called The Magic Treehouse.
I think I
And
remember it.
basically it's about two kids who they have this treehouse and they go back in time to pirates or ancient China or ancient
Yes,
Greece,
that's right.
and they learn about history and geography, but in a in a fun way. And I love these stories a lot, and I felt that I want to kind of bounce off of this. At the same time, we had like Iron Man and the Avengers coming around this time as well. So I was very much inspired by that as well. So I think in the earlier years, there's kind of this like taking a lot of these influences and then putting them in a book and starting out there. And then it evolved over time into what then became the Sunwaker, where I realized that yes, it's great to have entertainment, it's great to have science and technology, and furthermore, if you really want to connect with people, then you have to touch them here and
Mm,
at their emotional core. So that's why you mentioned the personal stories. So that's why I add that bit where yes, it's a story about a scientist trying to save his daughter, learning about nanomedicine, but it's much deeper than that. It's about a guy who's learning to disengage with his work and spend more time with his daughter at the time when it's perhaps most critical for him
mm,
to be working on a solution and spend less time with his daughter. So like that paradox right there was very much the crux of the story. And I felt like, yes, it's entertaining, yes, it's about science, but it's deeper than that. It's about a guy who's learning to view the world and live a better way. And I felt like having this emotional core, the soul of the story is very important. And I learned that when I was writing Sunwaker. And for the future, I think, I guess this passion of mine, you can say, has kind of evolved over the years. So, when I started writing, I didn't know that it was a passion. It was just like, an interest of mine.
hmm
And circumstances and, just like very much chance events led to this thing kind of snowballing more and more over time. And now this is what I am most passionate about compared to anything else. So I feel like I can see myself doing this for the rest of my life. Like it's become that much, something I love to
Heck
do.
of a.
And I think for the future, what I've come to realize is that with entertainment, it's a very multifaceted, multi-pronged approach to growing people. I can give you like a little list. You can inspire people, you can uplift people, you can make them laugh, you can motivate them to create beautiful things with their life. You can motivate them to create very different things, unconventional things with
Mhm.
their life. You can, what else? You can get them to believe in the power, in the power of achieving the impossible through a person's passion, through something that, is so like ridiculous, but somebody's passionate about that thing that they do it and you know, um, they end up beating everyone's expectations,
Yeah.
end up achieving the impossible as a result. So I feel like there's so many ways you can inspire people or motivate people or uplift people or change people, grow people through entertainment. And I'm like, uh, I think what excites me is to learn more and more about that and to figure out ways to incorporate that in my own works.
I think that's so insightful. And one of the things that the internet technology has done is completely flipped on its head the value of art. if
Mhm.
you look at years ago, it's like, okay, if you want to make money, you're an engineer, you're a scientist, you're a lawyer, you're this technical type of person. Nowadays with the internet, it's like, okay, you have this technology here and that's great, but that's kind of what everybody can have. Like anybody can build this now. What's really important is how are you going to communicate that? How are you going to get that message out to the masses? And so I think we've seen a renaissance, so to speak, of the art and entertainment industry and the availability of entertainers and artists to come out and be successful in their careers in various different ways. So I'm grateful for that. As a technical guy, I'm kind of like, hey, cool. But yeah, I was watching an old episode of Star Trek the other day, and one of the things that struck me after our earlier conversations was what Star Trek has done is given us a blueprint for what the world is going to be like when we're in space.
I just
You
okay.
know, through their entertainment, through their medium of, there's the Federation and there's these suits, and this is what it looks like to manage a starship and all of the interactions that they have in there. And it's very much I don't want to say it's a utopian because they have a lot of challenges that they go through, but very much the crew is here's how they're supposed to act and here's what it means to be an upright standing person in that society that they have. And I can't help but think that when we go to space, we're going to model that and we're going to say, okay, the entertainers showed us the way
Hmm.
decades ago for how this should look. And so I wonder, do you think about that? Do you think like that entertainment has that space to model for people what the world should look like?
Absolutely. I think actually, whether it's sci-fi, whether it's like Star Trek or Star Wars or Dune or Tron or any of these stories, or even fantasy, like whether it's Harry Potter. I think when we see new ideas that excite us, I think it inspires us to perhaps figure out how to make it happen.
Hmm.
At Iron Man, or the Avengers, and you see Iron Man's suit, the way it morphs, the way it flies, the
Yeah.
way he's able to get out, plasma beams. I think it's very cool, very exciting, and I think that's one thing that entertainment can do for us is that it shows us possibilities that we weren't really imagining or thinking of. But when we see it, it's like, oh wow, that's very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
It's like say you're living in South Florida and you see pictures of Switzerland. It's very different, very beautiful. It's going to excite you, right? So like maybe check it out. Or you
Right.
see photos, very different, very, modern. And I think when we see things that are a little bit different, but also like very beautiful, then we get, inspired by that. We get excited by that. We want to make it a reality. And I think that's the beauty of a dream, is that a dream is something that, it's not currently present in our lives, but we see it with so much clarity, with so much love, so much desire
Mm.
to do whatever it takes to achieve that dream.
Yeah. In your book, you have a list of people here: Mary Pope Osborne, J.K. Rowling, Rick Riordan, Mark
Yeah.
Osborne. Goes down some of these names I don't know, but Stephen Covey, Tony Asay, Tim Ferriss, Ron Friedman, Bill Gates, Dale Carnegie. All of these people have been like that, right? They're the people who had dreams, had the
Right.
passion to see them through and create something out of it. So I think it's cool that you mentioned that. One
Mhm.
one of the things that interests me about the entertainment industry is, especially today, especially with shorts and reels, and it's like there is always a new way to consume media. And what I tell people as much as possible is try to move yourself away from being a consumer to becoming a producer,
Okay.
because success is not in consuming the things that other people create. Success is in creating your own stuff and bringing your own ideas to the world. But of course, there's a balance there. And so, as an entertainer, What would you say that that balance is for you? Because you're obviously a creator, you're obviously producing, but is it like 50-50? Half the time you're watching YouTube videos and half the time you're creating? What does that look like?
That's a good question. One thing that I do, this is just like my strategy. I don't know for everyone, or but it's worked for me as so far as well. Is I usually create more on the weekdays and then consume on the weekends. So I usually don't do any work on the weekends, but whatever I do on the weekends very much, directly or indirectly impacts my work, my philosophies, my approach to life, approach to my work, my ideas. The reason also why, I have that alternation, on the weekdays and consuming on the weekends, that it gives me a nice, I think, break from the production process, from the creative process, and just gives me time to now consume material, consume information. So if you know like that, you know, of Kirby from the Nintendo games, like just like sucking in air or
Yeah.
sucking in anything on my weekends, whatever I can consume, I just
And then you turn into it, so you like have a hat and bow and arrow.
and I think it's great because it's great fun. Like I love to learn. I love to learn about things that interest me, whether it's a specific person or a specific company or specific mindset or topic, or it could be anything. And I'll make notes on that, and it ends up influencing again directly or indirectly how I work or what I work on in the long term. So just to give you an example, there is a music composer in India. His name's A.R. Rahman. A.R. Rahman. And he's a very prolific composer. Is very very much well known in India, and I love his music. And although I'm not a composer myself, I've still found something in his works that I wanted to imbibe in myself.
Mm.
Something that he does very well, which is he manages to connect. I feel his audiences, or those who listen to his music, he connects us to, I think, something much deeper,
Mm.
like connects us to the earth, to other animals, other plants, to each other, to the universe. It's a very I would say spiritual quality he has in his music, and I personally enjoy it a lot.
Mm.
And I'm not a composer, but I felt that there was something worth learning in what he does as a composer. And I think ever since I kind of just delved deep into his background, his psychology, what he works on, why he does what he does, how he works, I think I've been able to kind of capture that quality of his and infuse it in my own, I guess, soul, so to speak. Like I basically try to understand a person's soul. Who are they at their core, and how do they work? How do they think? How do they live? And once I've understood that aspect of somebody who I'm inspired by, it kind of, you can say, learn from that and then imbibe it in my own soul. I'm a combination of many souls, you can say, like, my parents, for example, some very close friends, some mentors, and especially people who I don't know personally, but people whose works I've been inspired by.
Yeah, it's funny how you say people that you've been inspired by that you don't know personally. I think one of the things that is really interesting about consulting, and that's kind of the full-time job that I do is consulting, is that people are much more willing to listen to strangers and learn from a stranger than they are from the people close to them. And I think mostly it's because we've already learned a lot from the people close to us, right? We know what they have to offer, what their strengths are, and what their advice would be in any given situation. So we're always looking for people, especially inspiring people. I mean, you mentioned a number of them at the end of that book, and
Right.
to point us in a new direction, to give us some new thoughts and inspire us in new ways. And I really find that interesting. It's like from a motivation standpoint, from a personal growth standpoint, there is nothing better than helping somebody grow than introducing them to somebody they've never met before. That's motivational, right? Like having somebody motivational that they've never met before can sometimes be that spark for them. They're like, wow, I really like this person. I like what they sound like. I like the message that they have, and it's new and it's exciting. And there's that paradox. It's like sometimes it's easier to change people you don't know than it is to change people that you do. And we all kind of have that quality about us, about inspiring others, and you just never know who it is you're actually inspiring at the end of the day. You're developing a video game today that's saying, here's what an ideal situation? Is it city or is it town or is it would look like? So I'd love to hear more about that too. Walk us through what it is you're working on with this video game. When is it coming out? What is it going to look like? I saw some Legend of Zelda vibes from some of the graphics you sent me. Do you want to talk through that for everyone?
Sure. And thanks for asking, by the way. I think the main inspiration aim was to create a world that inspires people. I feel that in times we could all use some more inspiration, some more happiness, some more uplifting, and to create an experience that's very beautiful, that's very uplifting, very magical, very romantic. You can say even something that is not meant to be an escapist reality, but something that I was talking about a dream earlier, right?
Mm.
That powerful dream that it inspires you to move towards that dream because of how beautiful it is, how attractive
Yeah.
it is. The dream attracts you out of its own accord, and your only job is to try and keep on working towards that dream, to make it happen. So my goal with the game is to make people dream again, to inspire them, to make them think of a better time, a better future for themselves, for their families, the whole world around us. I feel that more and more, we need to work together as a community, as a society, as a world, because that's how we'll progress the most.
Mhm.
The challenges we have today will kind of test to that. Whether you believe in it or not, whether it's climate change or whether it's just politics or whether it's racism or it could be anything. But I think we are and we can shift to a kinder, more loving world where people work more and more together. I think if you look at humanity like just across the time we've been around as a species, I think we have become more and more cooperative,
Mm.
more and more loving as a species, and that's why we are, I think, where we are today. We're living in a world where I can communicate with someone who I don't know at all very well in Japan or in China or in Africa. That hasn't been done before.
Yeah.
That's very new, very remarkable that we're living in times like that. And I think the more and more we shift to a more positive attitude of cooperating more, of loving more, of working together more, the more we'll work towards this future that is more beautiful,
Yep.
that is more prosperous, that is more loving. And that's kind of what the game's about. Is it's a very simple game. It's maybe like an hour or 2 hours long, but this experience should be a very life-changing experience for whoever's playing it. That when you finish the game, you're inspired, you're uplifted, you're happy, you're feeling encouraged to love, to dream,
Yeah.
to move to a goal or a reality that doesn't exist, but that you want to make it happen. That's kind of what the game's about.
I love that. I love the idea that first off, I like that it's short because people when we talk about consumerism versus production, if you can compress something, if you can compress a positive message down, one, you keep interest longer, and two, you deliver it more impactfully. So I think you've done that in your book, and clearly it's a lesson that you're carrying over into the game as well. But I love the idea of the community. There's the book Rational Optimism. There's several books out there that talk about how the world is steadily getting better and better and better for people. And I see that. I see, there are tons of content producers out there today that are saying, you know, here's how you can improve. Here's how you can improve personally. Here's how we can love better. Here's how we can learn more. Here's how we can understand another language. We can watch a YouTube video to, like you said, take us to Japan and understand that culture and understand that history and connect with people that we never could connect with before in real meaningful ways. And it's all beautiful, but it takes people to do it, right? It takes somebody to create that, to create those YouTube videos. It takes somebody to create YouTube. It takes somebody to write a book. It takes somebody to build this content that connects us to one another. And it takes those dreamers, as you mentioned, to have those dreams and to create those things that come to their mind. And so kudos to you for inspiring the dreamers in all those ways for it. And you want to give us some more flavor of what's going to be in the game or when we can expect it? I know you're taking your time, you're making sure that the game's going to be good and ready and all that, but any insights you can share with us there?
Like just on a more concrete level, the game's about, you're in this town and you can think of it like you're on a trip. You're in a place like Switzerland or in Japan or in Dubai or, wherever it is, but it's all fictional. We created this place, it's all imaginary. And the goal is for you to explore this town like you would any other city or any other place in the world. But this town specifically is something that again is meant to inspire, to uplift, to elevate, your own dreams and thoughts on what's possible. And again, like short and sweet, maybe an hour, 2 hours long. And you go around from place to place in this game, in this town, and every time you, for example, finish exploring a building or some landmark in the game in this town, then you have your itinerary and you check it off.
Mm.
Actually, about the game is to basically, if there is one, is to finish exploring all these landmarks or all these places in the town. And when you finish, then that's basically the end of the trip, and you go back home basically. But as far as like when to expect the game to come out, we're aiming for a release maybe in October, November, and that's a tentative if it's pending. I feel that there's a balance between ensuring that you're making something that's of quality, but also like not repeatedly delaying things by adding more things that perhaps aren't actually adding much value. So I think I've gotten better at that, or at least I'm trying to. And that's why I feel like if we have a October November release, then we have time to do things well while trimming out whatever might not be adding that much value in the game. That's kind of the goal.
Yeah, I love it. I can't wait to get my hands on the game, to play it and do a review of the game. I know we're coming up on the hour here, so I just want to say, kind of wrap us up, but say, Addy, I love what you're doing, man. I love the book that you wrote. I love your vision for things. I love how you're bringing together. I mean, the design and entertainment world is so foreign to me. I hope I can imbibe some of that in me, coming out of this, but I love that that's the space you've chosen, and I think you're doing an incredible job with it at such a young age. So I'm your fan and looking forward to seeing more of what you produce.
No, thank you, man. That means a lot to me, and kudos to you as well for starting a podcast. I think that's the focus of your work of this podcast and just what you do in growth. I think is fantastic. I love how it's very positive, very uplifting. In today's time, I think we just need more. And you've chosen a very good space as well. How to inspire people, how to figure out what makes people tick and get them to pursue a better future. So keep working on that. And I love the angle you're taking from it as well. A little bit more scientific, a little bit more rational. Excited to see what you figure out.
I appreciate it, man. Well, thank you so much, and I'm sure we'll do this again, hopefully sometime October, November, to
I want to, yeah.
share your game.